All right, let's dig in. Welcome to another deep dive, and today it's going to be a delicious one. We're tackling ordering food in English.
Sounds tasty.
You bet. I've got a whole stack of YouTube videos and some text here, all about navigating menus and making sure you get exactly what you're craving, no matter where you are in the world.
It's pretty amazing how much language goes into something we do every day. Like most of us don't even think about how many words and phrases go into just ordering a meal.
I know, right? And I bet some of you are listening thinking, ordering food, how hard can it be? But stick with us. Trust me, there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, yeah. It's so much more than just pointing at a menu and saying, I want that one.
Yeah.
It's about being able to express your preferences, understand different cooking styles, navigate cultural nuances.
Exactly. So our mission today is to give you the tools and confidence to order food in English like a pro, whether you're at a street food stall in Bangkok or a fancy restaurant in Paris.
From can I get a burger and fries to I'd like the seared scallops with a side of wilted spinach, we've got you covered.
So where do we even begin? There's a whole world of food vocabulary out there. It can feel kind of overwhelming.
I can, but let's break it down. Think of it like building a house. You need a strong foundation, right? And in the world of food, that foundation is your basic vocabulary.
Okay, I like the analogy. So what are those foundational building blocks?
Well, it starts with ingredients. Fruits, vegetables, meats, dairy, all those essential food groups.
Right, stuff we see at the grocery store, but in English, of course.
Exactly. Once you have a good grasp of those basic ingredients, you can start building up to more specific terms, like different types of fruits, vegetables, cuts of meat.
So like instead of just fruit, I can say mango or watermelon. Or instead of just meat, I can say steak or chicken breast.
You got it. It's all about expanding your food vocabulary brick by brick.
And that vocabulary really comes in handy when you're reading a menu, right? I mean, I've definitely encountered some dishes where I had no idea what the ingredients were.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about understanding what's on the menu. It's also about being able to describe what you want. If you're craving something specific, knowing the right words can make all the difference.
It's like having a mental grocery list in English, ready to go when you hit the restaurant.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And just like you need more than ingredients to build a house, you need more than nouns to order food. That's where cooking terms come in.
Ah, you mean like fried, grilled, baked, steamed, all those action words that tell you how the food is prepared?
Exactly. And those cooking terms are essential because they can completely change the flavor and texture of a dish.
Yeah, there's a big difference between a grilled chicken breast and a fried one, or a steamed vegetable versus a roasted one.
You're getting it. Knowing those cooking terms will help you understand the menu better and also communicate your preferences more clearly. You can say things like, I prefer my vegetables grilled, or could I have the fish steamed instead of fried?
So we've got our ingredients and cooking styles down. What's next in our culinary language toolbox?
Well, now it's time to talk about taste. After all, what's food without flavor?
Right, because I might love spicy food, but my friend might prefer something more mild.
Exactly. And being able to articulate those taste preferences is key to having a satisfying dining experience. So let's go over some of the basic taste categories. We've got sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and of course, spicy.
Oh, and don't forget umami, that savory deliciousness factor.
Right. Umami is often described as a meaty or brothy taste, and it's becoming increasingly popular in Western cuisine.
It's like the taste of pure deliciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to use these taste words effectively will help you describe what you're craving and get recommendations that match your preferences. You can say things like, I'm looking for something sweet and fruity, or I'd prefer a dish that's more savory than sweet.
I never thought about it like that, but using those taste words really paints a picture for the person taking your order. It helps them understand what you're looking for.
It does. It takes the guesswork out of ordering and increases your chances of getting a meal that you'll truly enjoy.
So we've covered ingredients, cooking styles, taste. What else is crucial when it comes to describing food? I feel like we're missing something.
You're right. We're missing one key element: texture.
Oh, texture, of course. I mean, who wants a soggy salad or a tough steak? Texture makes a huge difference in how much we enjoy our food.
Absolutely. And just like with taste, there are specific words we can use to describe different textures.
So, like, what are some examples?
Well, let's see. We've got crunchy, creamy, crispy, chewy, smooth, tender. The list goes on, and each word evokes a different sensation in our mouths.
It's true. Like, if I'm craving something crunchy, I'm probably not going to order a bowl of soup.
Exactly. So by understanding and using these texture words, you can really fine-tune your order and make sure you get something that satisfies all your senses.
Okay, so we've got our ingredients, cooking styles, taste, and texture. We've built our culinary language foundation. What's the next step?
Now, we need to learn how to put all those words together into coherent phrases. We need to master the art of actually ordering the food.
Right, because knowing the words is one thing, but being able to use them in a real life situation is a whole other challenge.
Exactly. And that's where some essential phrases come in handy. These are like your go-to tools for communicating with servers and getting your message across clearly.
So, like, what kind of phrases are we talking about?
Well, let's start with the basics. I would like, can I have, could I please order? These are simple, polite phrases that can be used in almost any situation.
They're like universal keys that unlock any dish you desire.
Exactly. And once you've mastered those, you can start adding in some more specific details, like, I would like the grilled chicken breast, please, or can I have the vegetarian pasta with a side salad?
Ah, so we're combining those basic phrases with the food vocabulary we learned earlier.
Precisely. And the more specific you can be, the better. You can use those taste and texture words to really paint a picture for the server, like, I'm in the mood for something spicy and crunchy. What would you recommend?
That's a great tip, because sometimes those menus can be overwhelming, especially in a new place. It's nice to get a little guidance from the expert, aka the server.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of a simple question. Phrases like, could you tell me more about this dish? Or what's the soup of the day like? Can really help you make an informed decision.
It's like having a mini conversation about the food before you even order. And speaking of conversation, what about those times when you have specific dietary needs? Our sources mentioned vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, and a whole range of preferences.
Well, that's crucial. Being able to clearly and politely communicate your dietary needs is so important. It ensures that you can enjoy a meal that aligns with your lifestyle and beliefs.
Right, because sometimes it's not enough to just point at a dish and say, vegetarian. There might be hidden ingredients or cooking methods that aren't obvious.
Exactly. So it's always best to be upfront and ask questions. You can say things like, is this dish vegetarian? Or does this contain any nuts? Or can this be made gluten-free?
It's all about being proactive and advocating for your own needs.
It is. And most restaurants are very accommodating these days, especially if you give them a heads up.
So we've covered the basics of food vocabulary, essential phrases, and even how to express dietary needs. But is there anything else we should be thinking about when ordering food in a new environment? Because sometimes it feels like there's more to it than just the words themselves, like there's a whole unspoken language of dining.
You're absolutely right. And that's where cultural nuances come into play. Things like tipping customs, dining etiquette, even the way you address the waitstaff can vary significantly from culture to culture.
So it's not just about what you say, it's also about how you say it and how you behave in the dining setting.
Precisely. For example, our sources mention that in Japan, tipping is considered offensive, whereas in the U.S. it's practically mandatory.
Wow, I didn't know that. It just goes to show how important it is to be aware of those cultural differences.
It really does. And those differences extend to the way you order food as well. In some cultures, it's perfectly acceptable to be very direct with your requests, while in others, a more indirect approach is preferred.
So it's like there's a whole layer of cultural understanding that goes into ordering food successfully.
There is, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It's not just about getting the food you want. It's about connecting with another culture through the language of food.
I love that. It's like turning a simple meal into a cultural adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are you ready to explore some of those specific dining scenarios? Because we've got a lot to cover.
Oh, absolutely. Let's dive in and see how to navigate those different situations, from casual cafes to fancy restaurants. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, we've got those basic food phrases down, we've got our vocabulary expanding, but now let's get into some specifics, right?
Right, because ordering a coffee to go is way different than, like, navigating a 5-course meal.
Exactly. So let's start with that classic, that sit-down restaurant experience. You know, you get handed a menu the size of a textbook, and suddenly you feel all this pressure.
I know that feeling. But honestly, remember, those menus are designed to showcase all the restaurant's got to offer. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people who asks a million questions before I order, like, what's in this? Or how is this prepared?
Exactly. And a good server will be happy to answer those questions. They want you to have a good experience.
Right. And what about those times when you see a word on the menu and you have absolutely no idea what it is? I've definitely had those moments of panic, staring at the menu like, what is this?
Oh, totally. Don't be shy. Just ask. You can say something like, excuse me, what is foie gras? Or whatever mystery ingredient you've encountered.
Much better than just randomly picking something and hoping for the best. And what about if the menu's in a totally different language? Like, I've been in situations where I'm looking at a menu full of characters I don't even recognize.
Okay, that's where technology can be your best friend. Don't be afraid to whip out that phone and use a translation app.
Oh yeah, that's a good tip. Even if the translation isn't perfect, at least it gives you a general idea.
Exactly. And you can always ask your server for recommendations or just point to something that looks good.
Right. Sometimes those visuals are the best way to communicate, especially when there's a language barrier. Okay, so we've tackled the sit-down restaurant. Now let's shift gears to something a little more casual. Fast food. It seems pretty straightforward, but are there any nuances we should be aware of?
Yeah, for sure. Fast food is all about efficiency. The menus are usually displayed pretty prominently. Everything moves quickly.
So you've got to be ready to order when you reach the counter. No time for hemming and hawing.
Right. And they might use specific terms like combo meal or value size. So pay attention to those.
And I imagine it helps to know some common abbreviations too, like what's a BLT if
Yeah.
you've never seen it written down before? Or what's a Whopper?
Exactly. Familiarizing yourself with those common fast food terms will just make things go smoother. Less chance of any confusion.
Okay, fast food. Check. What about buffets? I mean, it's like an all-you-can-eat paradise, but are there any etiquette rules we should keep in mind? Things you shouldn't do at a buffet.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Buffets can be tricky. It's important to be mindful of others. Don't take more than you can actually eat.
Right. No piling your plate sky high and then wasting half of it.
Exactly. And use a clean plate each time you go back for more. Don't just keep reusing the same one.
Oh, and what about those tongs and serving spoons? I always feel a little awkward trying to maneuver those.
It takes practice. But just remember to use the designated utensils for each dish. Don't use your own silverware to serve yourself from the buffet.
Good tip. And now for the last scenario I'm curious about. Takeout or delivery. It's become so common these days, but are there any special phrases or considerations we should be aware of?
Yeah, when you're ordering takeout or delivery, clarity is key. Be specific about your order. Include any substitutions or special requests you might have.
Right, because the person on the other end of the phone or the app can't see you, so you've got to be extra clear about what you want.
Exactly. Double check your address and phone number. And be sure to specify if you want contactless delivery.
Oh, and what about those online ordering platforms? I mean, they can be super convenient, but they also have so many options and customization features. It can be kind of overwhelming.
I know. But take your time, explore the menu, read those descriptions carefully, and don't hesitate to use the special instructions box for any specific requests, like no onions or extra sauce on the side.
That little instructions box is a lifesaver. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Sit-down restaurants, fast food, buffets, takeout, delivery. But what about those times when things go wrong? Like you order something and it's not what you expected, or it's not cooked properly, or, something just isn't right.
Yeah, those situations can be frustrating. But remember, mistakes happen. It's how we handle them that matters.
So how do we address those mistakes politely but effectively? Like without turning into a hangry monster?
The key is to be assertive but respectful. When the waiter brings your food and it's not what you ordered, or something's not right, don't just stay silent and eat it. You have the right to get what you paid for.
Right. But how do we speak up without causing a scene?
Just start by politely getting your server's attention. Excuse me, that's all it takes. Then calmly explain the situation. I ordered the vegetarian pasta, but this seems to have meat in it.
That sounds so much better than, hey, you got my order wrong.
Exactly. And if the food isn't just wrong, but it's actually bad, like it's burnt or undercooked, again, just be polite. Excuse me, but I think this chicken is undercooked. Or, I'm sorry, but this soup is way too salty for me.
Okay, so clear communication and respectful assertiveness. Got it. But what about those times when there's a language barrier? Like, I've been in situations where I'm trying to explain a problem and the waiter just doesn't seem to understand.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Mm.
It can be tough. But don't give up. Try using simple language. Speak slowly and clearly.
And maybe use some gestures, too, like pointing to the problem on your plate.
Yeah, gestures can be helpful. And if all else fails, you can ask for a manager or someone who might speak your language.
Okay, that's good to know. So even with language barriers, there are ways to communicate effectively. It's just about being patient and persistent.
Exactly. And sometimes those language barriers can lead to some pretty funny situations too.
Oh, I'm sure. Have you ever had any funny food ordering mishaps in a foreign country?
Oh, all the time. I remember once I was trying to order a croissant in this tiny little bakery in France,
Hmm.
and I said croissant, but with like my super American accent. And the baker looked at me with this completely confused expression and then just burst out laughing.
Oh no, what did you do?
We both just started laughing. And we eventually figured it out, with a lot of pointing and gesturing. I got my croissant in the end, but it was a good reminder that communication is a two-way street. And sometimes a little bit of humor goes a long way.
That's a great story. It just highlights the fact that ordering food in a different language isn't just about getting the food, it's about the whole experience. It's about the connections you make along the way.
You got it. It's about embracing those differences and using language as a tool to navigate new environments and expand your horizons. So, are you ready to take it up a notch? Because we've got some advanced techniques for those who want to sound even more natural and fluent.
Oh, I'm all ears. Let's dive in and see what those advanced techniques are all about. Okay, so we've gone from basic food vocab to dealing with tricky situations. But now let's talk about leveling up. Like, if I feel pretty confident with the basics, what can I do to sound even more, I don't know, natural and fluent when I'm ordering food in English?
I think it's all about adding those little touches that make you sound like a real pro. Like adding spices to a dish.
Yeah.
You got your core ingredients, but a pinch of this, a dack of that, it just elevates the flavors.
I like that analogy. So what are those linguistic spices? What can I sprinkle in?
Well, one of the easiest ways to level up is to start using more complex sentences. So instead of just saying, I want the chicken,
Yeah.
you could say, I think I'll go with the chicken, especially if it comes with that delicious sounding garlic sauce.
Oh, I see. So it's about connecting your thoughts and preferences in a more, I guess, nuanced way.
Yeah.
Instead of just listing items, it's like you're creating a little story about your meal.
Exactly. And those little connecting words like because, although, even though, those can really make a difference. Like, I'd love to try the spicy noodles, although I'm not sure how much heat I can handle.
It's like you're having a whole conversation with the menu. And speaking of conversations, what about those times when you want to, actually engage with the server or the staff? Our sources mention asking about local specialties or the waiter's personal recommendations.
Oh, that's a great way to practice your English and also like learn about new cuisines.
Yeah.
You might discover a hidden gem. Instead of just pointing at the menu, you could say something like, what's the most popular dish here? Or what would you recommend for someone who loves spicy food?
It's like instead of just being a transaction, it becomes more of a cultural exchange, right?
Exactly. And for those who are feeling really adventurous, don't be afraid to throw in some idioms.
Idioms, like those colorful expressions that native speakers use.
Yeah, they add a little personality to your language. So instead of saying, I'm very hungry, you could say, I'm starving.
Uh-huh.
Or if you're really enjoying a meal, you could say, this is hitting the spot.
Oh, I like those. It's
Well-
like you're not just ordering food, you're expressing your emotions through food language.
Exactly. And the cool thing is a lot of these idioms are rooted in cultural traditions and stories. So you're not just learning phrases, you're learning about the culture behind the cuisine too.
Wow, this has been such a cool deep dive. I never realized how much there is to discover about ordering food in English and how it connects to cultural understanding and even personal expression.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And the best part is, this is just the beginning. The more you practice, the more confident and fluent you'll become.
So to all our listeners out there, here's a challenge. Next time you're at a restaurant or ordering takeout, try using one new phrase or vocab word we talked about today. Just step outside your comfort zone a little and see what happens.
Yeah, you might be surprised at how a small change in language can totally transform your whole dining experience.
So until next time, happy eating and happy exploring the world of food through language.